Hello, guys. Welcome you all to the Insights into Books podcast. Before we start, kindly follow or subscribe us. And if you want daily summary files of these books, then subscribe us on Gumroad. Links are in description. Now, let's start today's discussion, guys. Today, we are diving deep into a subject that really forms the absolute bedrock of, well, how effective we are with other people. We're talking about mastering social interaction, influence, the real stuff.
Yeah, and we're digging into a set of principles, really a timeless blueprint for getting better at these social skills. Ideas that have, frankly, helped countless people build stronger connections and find more success, both personally and professionally.
And at the heart of it all, there seems to be this one single, really powerful truth about us as humans, right?
Absolutely. It boils down to a universal, almost relentless craving that every single person has. It's this deep desire to be appreciated, to feel genuinely important, significant in some way.
So our mission today is to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to developing that emotional intelligence. We've pulled out 30 core principles, really powerful ideas, and grouped them into 4 main areas.
And we're not just listing them. We want to really unpack each one, explore the why behind it. Because understanding this stuff, it's like getting the operating manual for human interaction. It helps you see why people act the way they do.
And how you can, interact more positively, more effectively.
Right. And it's funny, even though some of these concepts have been around for decades, they feel more relevant now than ever, don't they?
Definitely. In this crazy, connected world with constant information overload, social media everywhere.
Exactly. The need for genuine sincerity, for empathy, for really clear communication, it's paramount. One wrong step in how you handle people can echo much further now.
Yeah, it gets amplified.
But mastering these core ideas, that makes you sort of an anchor, a source of positive influence and stability in all that noise.
It really shows that basic human psychology, our core wiring, hasn't fundamentally changed, even with all the tech.
Not at all. That deep-seated desire for appreciation, for feeling important, it's constant. And if you learn how to genuinely address that need in others, you can sidestep so much unnecessary conflict and build real connection.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the absolute foundation. What are the first key techniques?
We begin with what you might call the foundational trio. These are like the 3 non-negotiable rules. You really need to get these down before you even think about persuasion or leadership. They set the stage for everything else.
All right, lay them on us. What's number 1?
Principle 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Okay, sounds simple enough on the surface, but wow, that's probably one of the hardest things to actually do consistently, isn't it? Especially when you feel you're right or someone's genuinely messed up.
It's incredibly difficult. And the reason it's principle number 1 is because criticism is essentially futile. It just doesn't work the way we think it does.
How so? What happens psychologically?
Well, think about it. The human ego's first reaction to being criticized, especially harshly, it's immediate defensiveness.
Yeah, the walls go straight up.
Exactly. Did you ever, when someone really laid into you, immediately think, oh, wow, thank you so much for pointing out my flaws. You're absolutely right.
No, never. My brain instantly starts building a case for why I did what I did, or why it wasn't really my fault, or why they don't understand the situation.
Precisely. Your brain launches its defense system.
Yeah.
You rationalize. You might even start blaming circumstances or other people. The core insight here is that the person doing the criticizing thinks they're appealing to logic, but they're actually attacking the other person's pride, their sense of self-worth.
And pride is a powerful force once that's engaged.
Forget it. They stop listening. They dig in. And here's the irony. People who are quick to criticize others rarely, if ever, criticize themselves with the same intensity.
That's true. We tend to have a narrative where we were forced to act, where circumstances were beyond our control.
We always feel justified, right?
Right.
And the argument here is that resorting to criticism is actually the easy path. It takes much more character, much more self-control, patience, and understanding to try and see why someone acted that way and maybe even forgive them than it does to just lash out.
So practicing this first principle isn't just about managing the other person. It's about managing yourself.
Absolutely. It's a form of self-mastery. If you make a conscious effort to stop criticizing, condemning, complaining, you automatically shift your own mental energy. Instead of dwelling on irritation and problems, you start focusing on understanding, solutions, or just moving forward positively. It actually improves your own emotional state quite dramatically.
Okay, so step 1 is controlling that impulse to attack. Avoid the friction. But if you can't criticize, How do you get people to change? How do you motivate improvement?
Ah, that leads perfectly into the second fundamental technique. It's the positive counterpart. Principle 2, give honest and sincere appreciation.
Honest and sincere. Those seem like the key words there.
Crucial words. If that deepest human drive is to feel important, then genuine appreciation is like, well, it's nourishment for the soul. But it must be distinguished from its cheap counterfeit, flattery.
Right. What's the difference? They can sometimes look similar on the surface.
They can, but they come from entirely different places. Flattery is insincere. It's often selfish you're saying it to get something. It comes only from the lips, not the heart.
Yeah.
And honestly, most discerning people can spot it a mile away. It feels hollow.
Okay, so true appreciation.
True appreciation is sincere. It comes from the heart. It requires you to genuinely stop thinking only about yourself and your own agenda for a moment and actually notice something commendable in the other person.
Like what specifically?
It could be anything. Their effort on a project, their unique perspective, their patience with a difficult client, their creativity, their punctuality, even just their positive attitude. You find something real, something you genuinely admire or value, and you articulate it.
And what does that do for the other person?
It directly feeds that core craving we talked about. The need to feel important, valued, seen. It boosts their self-esteem. It makes them feel good about themselves and about the action they took. And importantly, it motivates them to repeat that behavior because it got positive recognition.
It reinforces the good stuff, basically.
Precisely. There's a really touching story that illustrates this power perfectly. It involves Stevie Morris, who we later came to know as the music legend Stevie Wonder.
Oh, interesting.
As a young boy, obviously blind, he was in school in Detroit. One day, his teacher did something remarkable. She knew he had developed this incredibly acute sense of hearing, likely compensating for his lack of sight. A mouse got loose in the classroom, causing a bit of chaos.
Okay.
Instead of ignoring Stevie or treating his blindness as just a limitation, the teacher turned to him in front of the class and said something like, "Stevie, you have such wonderful ears. Could you use your special gift to help us find where that mouse is hiding?"
Wow, so she didn't just give generic praise, she acknowledged his specific, unique ability, an ability others might have just seen as, I don't know, a side effect.
Exactly. She framed his difference as a marvelous gift, a strength. And Stevie, focusing intently, listened and actually located the mouse for the class. He later said that moment, that specific act of recognition and appreciation for his unique skill, was one of the most profound and transformative moments of his young life.
That's incredible. It gave him validation, belief in himself.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
It was perhaps the first time someone had highlighted his heightened hearing, not with pity, but with genuine admiration and purpose. That single, sincere act of appreciation helped ignite a belief in his own unique capabilities. It literally helped set him on his path. That's the potential power we're talking about.
Amazing. Just one comment, but rooted in genuine observation and respect. Okay, so don't criticize, do give sincere appreciation. What's the third fundamental technique?
The third one ties it all together. If appreciation is the fuel that makes people feel valued and motivated, this next principle is about how you direct that energy. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want.
Arouse an eager want. What does that mean exactly?
This is the absolute key to influencing anyone's behavior. The fundamental mistake most of us make most of the time is focusing entirely on what we want.
Yeah, we're naturally self-interested, right? I need you to do this. I want you to buy that.
Exactly, and that's a very natural, almost childish focus. To effectively influence others, you have to consciously overcome that. You need to shift your entire focus to what the other person wants, what their desires are, what their problems are. And then, crucially, you need to show them how your suggestion, your idea, your product helps them achieve their goals.
Okay, so it's not about my needs, it's about framing it in terms of their needs.
Precisely. It's changing the proposition from "I need X" to "doing this thing I'm suggesting will get you Y, which I know you really want."
You used an analogy earlier, the fishing one.
Ah, yes, the classic analogy. When you go fishing, you don't bait the hook with strawberries and cream just because you love strawberries and cream, right?
No. You'd have a very unsuccessful fishing trip.
You use what the fish likes, a worm, maybe.
Hmm.
You appeal to the fish's desires. It's the same with people. You have to frame your appeal in terms of their interests and wants.
So in a practical sense, like in sales or just asking a colleague for help?
Think about sales. People don't really want to buy a drill. They want to buy a hole in the wall. They don't want to buy insurance. They want peace of mind. They don't want cosmetics. They want to feel attractive or confident. You have to sell the benefit that fulfills their want.
So you need to understand their want first.
Deeply. You have to put yourself entirely in their shoes. If you're trying to convince your teenager to quit smoking, lecturing them about long-term health risks or the cost might fall flat, but if you know they desperately want to make the basketball team,
Ah, you connect it to that. You talk about how smoking hurts their stamina, how quitting will make them faster, stronger, more likely to impress the coach and earn the respect of their teammates.
exactly, you paint a vivid picture of how their life, their status, their goals will improve because they take the action you're suggesting. You're not just making a request, you're offering them a path to something they eagerly desire.
That requires empathy and a real shift in perspective, away from me towards them.
It's fundamental. As one writer put it, he who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. It's about understanding and then leveraging legitimate human desire for mutual benefit.
Okay, those first three are powerful foundations for handling interactions. Now let's shift gears slightly. How do you actually get people to, well, like you, to build that genuine connection and rapport?
Right. This next set of 6 principles focuses on exactly that. It's about becoming the kind of person others naturally feel good around, someone they want to connect with. And it starts with something that, again, flips our usual instinct. Principle 1, become genuinely interested in other people.
Genuinely interested. Okay, this sounds related to the appreciation principle, but more active.
It is, and it's perhaps one of the most famous ideas from this whole philosophy, summarized brilliantly as, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you.
Wow, 2 months versus 2 years. That's a stark contrast. It really emphasizes shifting the focus outward.
Completely. Our natural inclination, often driven by insecurity or ego, is to try and impress others, to talk about ourselves, to get them interested in us. This principle says, do the exact opposite. Focus your energy on learning about them.
But the key word again is genuinely, isn't it? How do you cultivate genuine interest? Can it feel forced or manipulative if you're just pretending?
That's the crucial challenge. It cannot be faked effectively long term. People have a pretty good radar for insincerity. Genuine interest comes from curiosity. It comes from recognizing that every person has a unique story, unique experiences, unique passions and challenges.
So it's about adopting a mindset of curiosity.
Yes, and acting on it. Asking open-ended questions, listening more than you talk, remembering details about their lives, their families, their hobbies, showing you actually care about their world.
We see this online too, don't we, with social media influencers or community builders?
Absolutely. Think about the really successful ones. They're not just broadcasting constantly about themselves. They're asking their audience questions using polls, asking for opinions, responding to comments. They actively seek to understand the interests, problems, and desires of their community.
And that interaction, that feeling of being seen and heard by the influencer builds a much stronger bond, doesn't it?
Immensely stronger. That perceived genuine interest drives engagement and loyalty far more than just self-promotion ever could. When you shine the spotlight on others, you paradoxically become more magnetic yourself.
Okay, so genuine interest is step one. What comes next?
Something incredibly simple, yet profoundly effective. Principle 2.
Smile.
That's it. That's a huge part of it. Think
Yeah.
of a sincere smile, not a forced grin, but a genuine, warm smile. It's a universal signal. It crosses language barriers, cultural divides. It instantly communicates warmth, friendliness, openness. It basically says, non-verbally, I like you, I'm happy to see you, I'm approachable.
Actions speak louder than words in this case.
Very much so. A smile sets the emotional tone for an interaction before you even say a word. There's another layer to it. The idea that motion creates emotion.
What do you mean by that?
The physical act of smiling, even if you're not feeling particularly cheerful initially, can actually influence your own internal state. Forcing yourself to adopt the physical posture of happiness, lifting the corners of your mouth, maybe even crinkling your eyes slightly, can send signals back to your brain that can genuinely lift your mood.
So fake it till you make it actually has some basis here.
To an extent, yes. It's about using the physical to influence the emotional. And importantly, that warmth isn't just for face-to-face interactions. Even when you're talking on the phone, if you're smiling while you speak, that positive energy, that lift, comes through in your tone of voice. People can hear a smile.
That's a great point. Okay, so be genuinely interested and offer a sincere smile. What's principle 3?
This one is about recognizing the power of identity. Principle 3. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Their name. Why is that so critical?
Because a person's name is fundamental to their identity. It's the label for their entire sense of self. When you remember and use someone's name, you're implicitly acknowledging their individuality, their importance. It's a subtle but powerful compliment.
And forgetting it.
Forgetting it or mangling it sends the opposite message. It makes them feel insignificant, overlooked, like they didn't make enough of an impression to be remembered. It essentially says, you don't matter that much to me. It can feel like a real slight.
Ouch. Yeah, I know that feeling. It stings.
It really does. Conversely, think about how you feel when someone you barely know or someone in a position of authority remembers and uses your name correctly. It creates an instant connection, a feeling of recognition.
You see this with really effective leaders, don't you? Politicians, CEOs, they often make a huge effort to remember names.
Absolutely. They understand it's not just a nice social grace, it's a critical tool for connection and management. Recalling an employee's name, a customer's name, a constituent's name, it shows respect, it shows you're paying attention, it builds goodwill instantly.
There was a historical example mentioned about this too, wasn't there? Something about Carnegie.
Yes, a brilliant strategic move by Andrew Carnegie early in his career. He was building his steel empire and needed massive contracts from the Pennsylvania Railroad. The president of the railroad at the time was a man named Edgar Thomson.
Okay.
So what did Carnegie do? He named his big new steel mill in Braddock, Pennsylvania, the Edgar Thomson Steel Works.
Whoa. He named the whole mill after the guy he needed business from.
Exactly. It was an incredibly shrewd move. It was public, it was significant, and it was immensely flattering to Edgar Thomson's ego. It wasn't the only reason Carnegie got the contracts, of course, but it demonstrated a deep understanding of human psychology, the immense emotional weight and importance we attach to our own names. It helped pave the way.
That's leveraging the principle on a grand scale. Okay, so remember names. What follows that?
If remembering their name acknowledges their identity, the next principle is about valuing their voice. Principle 4, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Be a good listener. Again, sounds simple, but probably isn't as easy as it looks.
It's deceptively difficult because most of us think we're good listeners, but often we're just waiting for our turn to speak, or we're listening only to reply, to debate, or to interject our own story.
So what does good listening look like in this context?
It's active, empathetic, and focused entirely on the other person. It's about genuinely wanting to understand their perspective, their experiences, their feelings. And crucially, it's about encouraging them to talk more, especially about themselves.
Why is that so effective in making people like you?
Because, let's be honest, what's most people's favorite subject?
Themselves?
Bingo. People are inherently, deeply, fascinatingly interested in themselves. Their lives, their problems, their accomplishments, their opinions. When you provide a safe, attentive space for them to explore that favorite subject, they feel incredibly validated and understood.
And they associate that good feeling with you, the listener.
Exactly. There's a classic story about this. A person attended a fancy dinner party and happened to be seated next to a distinguished botanist. Now, this person knew next to nothing about botany.
Okay, awkward situation potentially.
Could have been. But instead of trying to steer the conversation to topics they knew or pretending to know about plants, this person simply started asking the botanist engaging questions about his work, his passion. They listened with rapt attention, genuine curiosity, and obvious enthusiasm for hours.
So the speaker barely said anything about themselves.
Hardly anything. They just kept prompting the botanist, drawing him out, showing real interest. At the end of the evening, as people were leaving, the botanist pulled the host aside and raved about his dinner companion, calling him a most interesting conversationalist.
Even though he'd barely conversed, he'd mostly just listened.
Precisely. He hadn't been interesting by talking. He'd been interesting by listening. He made the botanist feel fascinating, important, and thoroughly enjoyed. That's the secret power of being a truly good listener. It's incredibly magnetic.
That makes so much sense. It allows the other person to feel valued and heard.
And it does something else too. When someone feels they've really been listened to, truly heard, until they've expressed everything they need to say, their ideas, their complaints, their passions, they reach a point of emptiness, almost. They've gotten it all out.
And then they're ready to listen.
Then, and often only then, are they mentally and emotionally receptive to hearing what you have to say. Patient, sympathetic listening can disarm even the most agitated or critical person simply by providing that essential outlet.
Okay, this flows naturally into the next one, doesn't it? If you're listening well, you discover their interests.
Exactly. Which brings us to principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
So it's not enough just to listen to their interests. You should actively talk about them too.
Yes. Once you've identified what someone is passionate about, what really lights them up, whether it's their kids, their hobby, their career, their favorite sports team, steer the conversation towards that. This is often called the royal road to a person's heart.
Why is it so effective?
Because you're entering their world. You're showing respect for what matters to them. It creates an immediate sense of common ground and connection, even if you don't share the interest yourself initially. You're showing you value what they value.
Is this something you can prepare for?
Absolutely. Think about Theodore Roosevelt. He was famous for this. Whenever he knew someone was coming to visit the White House, he'd often stay up the night before reading about a subject he knew the visitor was passionate about.
Seriously, he'd do homework on his guests.
He would, whether it was cattle ranching or naval history or bird watching. So when the visitor arrived, Roosevelt could ask insightful questions and engage them on their favorite topic. His visitors were often amazed by his breadth of knowledge.
But it wasn't just general knowledge, it was targeted preparation.
It was strategic empathy. He knew that by talking in terms of their interests first, he could establish immediate rapport, make them feel comfortable and valued. This created a positive atmosphere, a strong connection. And then, once that rapport was built, the visitor was naturally much more receptive to discussing whatever business Roosevelt needed to address.
That's brilliant. Build the bridge first, using their interests.
Build the bridge first, always. Find that common ground, explore their passions, and the rest of the interaction becomes much smoother.
Okay, we've covered interest, smiling, names, listening, and talking about their interests. What's the sixth way to make people like you?
This one brings us full circle, back to that fundamental human craving we started with. Principle 6. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Back to the core need. How does this differ from giving appreciation? Principle 2.
It's related, but broader. Appreciation often focuses on a specific action or trait. Making someone feel important is about acknowledging their overall value, their significance as an individual. It's about conveying through your words and actions, you matter.
And again, the sincerity clause is key.
Absolutely critical. Empty compliments or transparent attempts to make someone feel important fall flat. It has to stem from a genuine belief in the worth of every individual and finding something specific to recognize.
So how do you do this sincerely in everyday interactions?
It's about being observant and respectful. Find genuine qualities to admire, maybe their work ethic, their unique perspective, their sense of humor, their dedication to their family. Acknowledge their contributions, ask for their opinion, and listen thoughtfully to the answer.
Asking for their opinion gives them a sense of authority or expertise.
Exactly. It shows you value their judgment. For example, if you admire someone's project management skills, don't just say, good job. You could say, I was really impressed by how smoothly that project ran. How did you manage to keep everything on track so well? I could really learn from your approach.
So you're combining appreciation with making them feel important by seeking their expertise.
Precisely. You're acknowledging their competence, giving them the stage to talk about their success, tapping into Principle 4, listening, and making them feel valued and respected. It's about consciously looking for opportunities to lift others up, to recognize their inherent worth, and doing it from a place of genuineness. This fulfills that deep human need and makes people feel truly good in your presence.
Okay, part 2 was about building rapport and making people like you. Now let's move into potentially trickier territory. Persuasion. How do you actually win someone over to your way of thinking, especially if they disagree, without causing resentment or making them defensive?
Right. This is where things can get challenging because now we're often dealing with differing opinions, potentially conflicting goals, and sensitive egos. There are 12 principles here, and the first one is quite counterintuitive for many people.
Let's hear it.
Principle 1. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
Avoid it. But what if you're right? What if you need to convince someone of something important? How can you win if you avoid the argument?
That's the paradox. The philosophy argues that you can't truly win an argument in the way we usually think of winning. Arguments are almost always futile exercises.
Why futile?
Because they rarely change anyone's mind, certainly not long term. They mostly just serve to solidify each person's original position. And more importantly, they almost always damage the relationship. Arguments wound pride, create resentment, and attack a person's sense of self-dignity.
So even if you win the argument on points, you might lose something bigger.
Exactly. Think about it. If you lose the argument, well, you've lost. But if you win, you might feel triumphant for a moment, but you've likely made the other person feel defeated, maybe foolish, and resentful of your victory. Their pride is hurt. So have you really gained anything? Probably not. You've likely damaged the connection.
So it's a lose-lose situation most of the time.
Pretty much. It becomes a battle of egos, not a search for truth or the best solution. Someone once famously said you should yield in major matters if needed, and always yield in minor ones. The advice is to approach disagreements, seeking understanding and common ground, not victory. Remember the old saying, a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall.
Okay, avoid the fight itself. But you still might disagree. How do you handle the difference of opinion then?
That leads directly to principle 2. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, you're wrong.
Never say you're wrong, even if they are demonstrably wrong.
Especially then. The moment you utter those words, you're wrong, you've essentially delivered a direct blow to their intelligence, their judgment, their pride. It's like slamming a door in their face.
And what happens then? Defensiveness again.
Instantaneous and intense defensiveness. They are now forced by their own ego to defend their statement or belief to the bitter end, regardless of the facts. You've made it about them being wrong, not about the issue itself. They'll dig their heels in.
So what's the alternative if you genuinely believe their facts or conclusion are incorrect?
You adopt a much softer, more humble and collaborative approach. Instead of confrontation, you use phrases that open the door to discussion without attacking their ego.
Like what? Give me an example.
You could say something like, well, look, I might be wrong about this, and I often am, but my understanding of this situation is slightly different. Perhaps we could look at the facts together and see if we can get a clearer picture. I'm always willing to be corrected if I'm mistaken.
Ah, so you start by acknowledging your own fallibility. I may be wrong.
Exactly. It immediately disarms them. It signals that you're not there to attack or win, but to understand and find the truth collaboratively. It lowers the emotional temperature dramatically and makes them far more likely to consider the information without feeling personally threatened.
That takes a bit of swallowing your own pride, doesn't it?
It does. But it's far more effective in the long run if your goal is actual persuasion or problem solving rather than just scoring points.
Okay, but what if, during that review of the facts, it becomes clear that you were actually the one who was wrong?
Excellent question. That brings us to principle 3. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Quickly and emphatically, don't hedge or try to minimize it.
No, jump on it. If you realize you've made a mistake, admit it immediately, openly, and with genuine emphasis. Don't wait to be called out. Don't make excuses. Just own it.
Why is this so powerful? It feels a bit vulnerable.
It is vulnerable, but it's incredibly disarming. Think about it. You completely take the wind out of the other person's sails. They might have been gearing up to criticize you or point out your error, but you beat them to the punch.
And what does that do for them?
It gives them a feeling of importance. You've put them in the position of being right and potentially the position of being magnanimous and forgiving. There's often a certain nobility in admitting fault, and people frequently respond with generosity rather than attack when you do it sincerely. The anticipated fight just evaporates.
You mentioned a story about this, something with a dog.
Yes, the classic example. The person telling this story had been caught by a police officer walking his dog in the park without a muzzle, which was against the regulations. He got a warning. A few days later, the same officer caught him again. Same dog, still no muzzle.
Oh boy, busted.
Totally busted. But instead of waiting for the officer to start the lecture or write the ticket, the person immediately spoke up, saying something like, "Officer, you've caught me red-handed. I'm guilty. I have absolutely no excuses. You warned me last week, and I completely ignored it. I deserve whatever fine you give me."
So complete and utter surrender.
Total, emphatic admission of fault. And what happened? The officer's tone completely softened. Instead of anger, he started saying things like, "Well, it is a small dog, and maybe just keep him over the hill where I can't see you." He was disarmed by the quick, sincere admission. The person gave the officer the feeling of importance and superiority by admitting fault, and the officer responded with leniency.
Wow. The opposite of arguing actually worked better.
Much better. It diffused the conflict instantly. And this idea of diffusing conflict before it starts leads perfectly into the next principle.
Which is?
Principle 4. Begin in a friendly way.
Start friendly. Seems obvious, maybe.
It seems obvious, but think how often we fail to do it when we're anticipating disagreement or we feel annoyed. If you approach someone with hostility or even just coldness, what do you invite in return?
Hostility or coldness right back. Like attracts like.
Exactly. You can't possibly persuade someone or win them to your way of thinking if they actively dislike you or feel attacked from the outset. Friendliness, warmth, and appreciation are like the sun and the old fable of the sun and the wind trying to get a man to take off his coat.
Right, the wind blew harder and harder, but the man just clutched his coat tighter.
But when the sun shone warmly and gently, the man willingly took his coat off himself. Friendliness and a warm approach make people want to agree with you, or at least hear you out. Hostility just makes them resist.
You mentioned Rockefeller using this with strikers.
Yes, John D. Rockefeller faced a bitter and violent strike at one of his coal mines. The miners deeply distrusted and disliked him. He could have gone in with force or lawyers, but he chose a different path.
He began in a friendly way. How?
He spent weeks just being there, visiting the miners' homes, talking with their families, listening to their concerns, attending their social events. He made genuine human connections before trying to negotiate. When he finally gave a speech, it was filled with friendliness. He complimented them specifically on their peaceful conduct during his visit, emphasized their shared interests, and spoke about wanting a fair resolution for everyone.
So he completely changed the emotional atmosphere first.
It did. He shifted it from antagonism to potential collaboration simply by beginning, consistently and sincerely, in a friendly way. That paved the path for resolving the strike.
Okay, start friendly. What's next in the persuasion toolkit?
Principle 5. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately.
Get them saying yes, like right away. How does that work?
This is about understanding the psychology of agreement and disagreement. When a person says no, or even just thinks no, something physiological happens. Their whole system, nerves, muscles, glands, gathers itself together into a state of rejection. There's a withdrawal.
Okay, a no is like butting up a barrier.
Exactly. And once someone has said no, their pride kicks in. They feel compelled to stick to it, to remain consistent. Even if they later realize the no was unwise, their ego makes it hard to backtrack.
So you want to avoid triggering that no response at all costs, especially early on.
Precisely. Instead, you deliberately steer the conversation towards points of agreement first. You start by asking questions or making statements that you know the other person will agree with. Get them nodding, get them saying yes, verbally or mentally.
You're building momentum, creating an affirmative mindset.
That's exactly it. You're guiding them down an affirmative path. Each yes is like a little step forward, making it psychologically easier to keep moving in that direction. Once you've established this pattern of agreement on several smaller points, they're in a much more receptive, open state when you finally introduce the main point or proposal you want them to consider. It's much harder for them to suddenly pivot to no after a series of yeses.
It's like creating a positive psychological current.
A perfect way to put it. You're setting the stage for acceptance.
All right, so start friendly, get them saying yes.
Okay,
What's next?
Once you've opened the door with friendliness and agreement, you need to resist the urge to dominate the conversation. Principle 6. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Let them talk, but I thought I was trying to persuade them. How does letting them talk help me?
This is a common mistake, especially for people who are passionate about their ideas. They think persuasion means talking at someone, presenting all their brilliant arguments, but it's often counterproductive. Because if the other person still has their own ideas, opinions, or grievances bottled up inside, they're not really listening to you anyway. They're just waiting for a chance to express their thoughts. They might be nodding, but their mind is formulating their rebuttal.
So talking too much yourself actually prevents them from being receptive.
It often does. The principle here is to let them talk themselves out. Encourage them to fully express their viewpoint, their feelings, their concerns. Ask questions, listen patiently, using Principle 4 from Part 2. Let them empty their minds and hearts.
And only when they've finished.
Only when they feel truly heard and understood are they likely to be open and receptive to listening to your perspective. Plus, people generally know their own problems and business better than you do. Letting them talk often reveals valuable information or solutions you hadn't considered.
It's also about making them feel important again, isn't it? Giving them the floor.
Absolutely. And there's another angle. Even with friends, if you constantly dominate the conversation, always talking about your successes, always topping their stories, how does that make them feel?
Probably a bit inferior, maybe envious.
Right. Letting others talk, especially about their achievements, allows them to shine and feel important. Paradoxically, they'll often like you more for being the person who allowed them that spotlight.
Okay, so listen more, talk less, let them express themselves fully. What's Principle 7?
This one is subtle but incredibly powerful. Principle 7. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Let them feel the idea was theirs, even if it was originally yours. How do you manage that?
It stems from a basic truth. People have infinitely more faith in ideas they discover or develop themselves than in ideas that are handed to them on a platter, even if they're great ideas. We naturally trust our own conclusions more.
So if you want someone to adopt your idea, you shouldn't just present it directly.
Often it's more effective to plant seeds, to offer suggestions, to present facts, or ask questions in a way that guides them to arrive at the conclusion you had in mind. You let them connect the dots.
So they have that aha or eureka moment themselves.
Exactly. When they feel they figured it out or originated the core concept, they take ownership of it. They champion it with far more enthusiasm and commitment than if it felt like something imposed on them.
This requires a certain amount of humility, letting go of the credit.
It requires significant humility and strategic thinking. You have to prioritize the outcome, getting the idea adopted over getting the personal credit for it.
There was an example of this with sketches.
Yes, Mr. Wesson, who sold design sketches to textile manufacturers. Initially, he'd present his finished designs and often face rejection or criticism. He changed his approach entirely. He started bringing clients rough, incomplete sketches. He'd say something like, here are a few preliminary ideas. What do you think we could do with these? How could we adapt them to make them really useful for your line?
So he invited them to co-create, to finish the idea.
Precisely. The clients would offer suggestions, make changes, essentially finalize the design themselves. They felt tremendous ownership over this customized vision. And because it now felt like their idea, they were far more likely to buy the finished product based on those collaborative sketches. Wesson let them feel the creative spark.
That's clever, guiding them to the conclusion. Okay, what's Principle 8?
Principle 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
Empathy again, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yes, but it's more than just understanding their position intellectually. It's about making a sincere effort to grasp why they think, feel, and act the way they do, given their background, their interests, their experiences, their goals.
Even if you think they're completely wrong.
Especially then. Remember, even if someone is objectively wrong, they don't think they are. They have reasons for their beliefs and actions, even if those reasons seem flawed to you. If you want to influence them, you first need to understand the why behind their perspective.
So it's about understanding their internal logic, their motivations.
Exactly. What drives them? What are they afraid of? What do they hope to achieve? Success in dealing with people hinges on sympathetically grasping the other person's viewpoint. If you can figure out the why, you hold the key to potentially changing their what or how. This requires real tolerance and emotional intelligence.
And does this lead into the next principle?
It flows directly into it. Once you've made the effort to see their viewpoint, the next step is Principle 9. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires.
Sympathetic. How does that differ from just understanding their viewpoint?
Understanding can still be detached, analytical. Sympathy involves connecting emotionally. It's acknowledging the validity of their feelings about their ideas and desires, even if you don't agree with the ideas or desires themselves.
So recognizing their emotions are real and understandable given their perspective.
Yes. The reality is most people, maybe 3/4 of us, the thinking goes, are absolutely starving for sympathy. They desperately want someone to understand and acknowledge their feelings, their struggles, their aspirations.
And if you can provide that sympathy,
You build an incredibly strong bridge. There's a phrase often called the magic phrase for dissolving hostility and building connection instantly.
what is it?
It's saying something like, I don't blame you one bit for feeling the way you do. If I were in your exact situation with your background and experiences, I have no doubt I would feel precisely the same way.
Wow. That sounds powerful. Can you always say that sincerely?
Think about it. You almost always can say it sincerely. Because if you truly had their temperament, their information, or misinformation, their experiences, their goals, you would likely feel the same way they do. You're not saying you agree with their conclusions or actions. You're validating their emotional response to their perceived reality.
That really shifts the dynamic from confrontation to shared understanding, doesn't it?
Instantly, it shows you're not judging them, you're trying to connect with their experience. It makes them feel safe and understood, which opens the door for more productive conversation.
Okay, sympathy established. Where do we go next?
Once you've built that connection, you can try appealing to their better nature. Principle 10. Appeal to the nobler motives.
Nobler motives. What does that mean?
People usually have two reasons for doing anything. the reason that sounds good, and the real reason. The sound good reason is often tied to higher ideals: fairness, honesty, integrity, generosity, duty.
And the real reason might be more self-interested.
Often, yes. But the key insight here is that people want to think of themselves as honorable and upright. We are all idealists at heart, at least to some degree. We want to live up to a positive self-image.
So how do you use this in persuasion?
When you want to influence someone's behavior, especially if they're reluctant, you appeal to those nobler motives. Assume they want to do the right thing, to be fair, to be responsible. Frame your request in terms of those higher values.
Give me an example.
Say a customer is trying to return merchandise clearly outside the return policy, maybe claiming it was defective when it wasn't. Instead of accusing them, you might appeal to their sense of fairness, perhaps by explaining the policy clearly but also trusting their judgment, implying you believe they want to be reasonable. Or if someone owes you money, appealing to their sense of honor and integrity might be more effective than making threats.
So you give them a chance to live up to a better version of themselves and save face.
Exactly. You allow them to align their actions with motives they can feel proud of. People will often make considerable effort to justify the faith you've placed in their finer instincts.
Okay, appeal to noble motives. What if the situation needs more impact?
Sometimes just stating the facts or making a logical appeal isn't enough to capture attention or convey urgency. That's where Principle 11, dramatize your ideas, comes in.
Dramatize, like put on a show.
In a way, yes. We live in an age of drama. The truth alone is often insufficient. Ideas need to be made vivid, interesting, memorable. They need showmanship, especially in today's crowded attention economy.
So it's about presentation, making the idea stick.
Yes. Making it tangible, impactful. Think about safety demonstrations that use dramatic visuals, or charities that tell one compelling, emotional story instead of just listing statistics.
You mentioned an example with coins.
Right. The story of a sales analyst trying to convince a store owner that his inefficient checkout system was costing him money. Spreadsheets and reports weren't getting through. So the analyst went behind the counter, timed a few transactions, then dramatically threw a handful of nickels and dimes onto the floor.
What do you say?
He said something like, "Look, you're literally throwing away that much money with every few customers who walk through here because of this inefficiency." Suddenly, the abstract loss became concrete, visible, dramatic. The owner got the message immediately and approved the new system.
It made the problem real and urgent.
Exactly. You have to translate your ideas into memorable, dramatic actions or visuals when the situation calls for it.
Okay, dramatize for impact. What's the final principle in this section on persuasion?
The 12th principle is often a last resort, but a powerful motivator when other approaches fail. Principle 12, throw down a challenge.
Throw down a challenge, like a competition.
Precisely. When praise, logic, sympathy, and drama aren't enough, appeal to the fundamental human desire to excel, to compete, to win, to prove one's worth. Turn the task or goal into a game, a contest, a challenge to be overcome.
Why does this work so well?
It taps into our innate love of the game, the desire to demonstrate competence and superiority. Think about sports or sales contests or even just personal fitness goals. The element of challenge, of striving to meet or beat a standard, is incredibly stimulating.
So if a team's performance is lagging, instead of just demanding improvement,
You might set up a friendly competition between shifts or challenge them to beat their own previous record, maybe with some form of recognition for the winners. Charles Schwab famously used this. He'd find ways to spur competition between his mill crews, not necessarily with money, but appealing to their pride and desire to be the best.
it injects energy and motivation by framing the work as a chance to excel and prove themselves.
Exactly. It awakens that spirited desire to win, which can often push people beyond what they thought they were capable of.
All right, we've covered fundamentals, making connections, and persuasion. This final section zeroes in on leadership. How do you, as a leader, whether a manager, a parent, a teacher, guide people, correct mistakes, or change behavior without causing resentment or making them feel defensive? These seem like crucial skills for anyone in charge.
Absolutely crucial. If you want to lead effectively and maintain loyalty and morale, how you handle corrections and inspire change is paramount. There are 9 principles here specifically tailored for this.
Okay, where does a leader start when they need to address a problem or suggest a change?
You always start positively. Principle 1, begin with praise and honest appreciation.
This sounds familiar, like Principle 2 in the first section, and also related to the sandwich technique people talk about.
It's very related. The core idea is that it's always easier for someone to hear something critical or unpleasant after they've first heard genuine recognition of their good points. It softens the blow and shows that you see their overall value, not just the mistake.
But the praise has to be sincere and specific, right?
Yeah.
Not just generic, you're doing great, but...
Absolutely. Empty praise followed by criticism feels manipulative. You need to find something genuinely commendable about their work or effort and state it clearly and honestly before you introduce the area needing improvement. John, your report was incredibly well-researched, the data analysis was top-notch, and then you move to the issue.
Okay, so start with genuine praise. But how do you introduce the criticism or correction? You mentioned the word but can be tricky.
Very tricky. Which leads us to principle 2. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly.
Indirectly, how does that work? And what's the problem with but?
The problem with but is that it often completely negates the praise that came before it. When someone hears, "You did a great job, but," their brain often dismisses the compliment and just braces for the criticism. The but acts like an eraser.
So what's the indirect approach?
One technique is to replace but with and. So instead of, "We're really proud of your progress, but you need to focus more on meeting deadlines," you might say, "We're really proud of your progress, and if you continue to develop your time management skills to consistently meet deadlines, you'll be even more effective."
So and feels more like building on the positive rather than canceling it out.
Exactly. It frames the needed improvement as the next step in their growth, building on their existing strengths. Another indirect method is through demonstration or suggestion, rather than direct confrontation.
Like this story about the store owner, Wanamaker.
Yes, John Wanamaker, the department store pioneer. The story goes he walked through his store one day and saw a customer waiting at a counter being completely ignored while several salespeople were just chatting amongst themselves nearby.
What did he do? Did he yell at them?
No. He didn't say a word to the salespeople. He quietly slipped behind the counter, personally served the customer, made the sale, wrapped the purchase, and then simply handed the wrapped package to the salespeople to finalize the transaction before walking away.
Wow. So he showed them the standard by doing it himself without a direct rebuke.
Precisely. He called attention to their mistake indirectly through his own actions. They got the message loud and clear without being publicly shamed or criticized. It was a masterful, indirect correction that preserved their dignity.
That preservation of dignity seems key, which maybe relates to the next principle.
It definitely does. Before you even think about criticizing someone else, look inward. Principle 3. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
Start with your own flaws. How does that help?
It creates a sense of equality and shared humanity. If you begin by humbly admitting some of your own shortcomings or mistakes, especially ones relevant to the issue at hand, it makes the other person feel less singled out, less judged. It takes the sting out of the criticism that might follow.
So it levels the playing field. Makes you seem less like a perfect judge and more like a fellow struggler.
Exactly. It creates rapport and makes them far more receptive to hearing about their own areas for improvement. For example, I used to really struggle with procrastination myself, especially on big projects. One thing I found that helped me was breaking it down into smaller steps. I wonder if something like that might help you with this deadline.
It softens the feedback and makes it feel more like helpful advice from someone who understands.
Precisely. It lowers defenses significantly.
Okay, admit your own mistakes first.
Yeah.
What's next for leaders trying to guide action?
Avoid being dictatorial. Principle 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Ask questions. Why is that better than just telling someone what to do? Especially if you're the boss.
Because nobody really likes taking orders. It makes people feel subordinate, passive, and it can stifle their own initiative and creativity. Direct orders can easily breed resentment, even if they're followed.
So asking questions achieves the same goal, but in a better way.
Often, yes. Asking questions does several things. It makes the person feel respected, like their input matters. It stimulates their own thinking and creativity to find solutions. And crucially, it allows them to feel they participated in the decision, which increases their buy-in and motivation to follow through.
Can you give an example of phrasing?
Instead of saying, "I need you to finish this report by 5 p.m., you might ask, "What do you think is the best way to ensure we can get this report finalized and submitted by 5 p.m. today?" Or, "Do you think it would be more effective if we approach this problem from angle X or angle Y?"
It empowers them to think and contribute rather than just comply.
Exactly. It gives them a sense of autonomy and makes them feel like part of the solution, not just a cog carrying out instructions. People are much more likely to enthusiastically support an idea they feel they had a hand in creating.
This all seems tied together by a deep respect for the other person's feelings and dignity.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a critically important principle for leaders. Principle 5, let the other person save face.
Save face. What does that mean in practice?
It means you should never unnecessarily diminish a person's dignity or publicly shame them, even when they've made a mistake or when you have to deliver bad news like letting them go. Hurting someone's pride deeply, especially in front of others, is something that's rarely forgiven or forgotten.
So even criticism or difficult conversations should be handled tactfully.
Always tactfully and, whenever possible, privately. You need to consider the impact of your words and actions on their self-respect. Find ways to cushion the blow, to acknowledge their effort even if the outcome wasn't right, to focus on the issue rather than making it a personal attack.
There was a story about a marketing executive and Amazon.
Yes, a great example. Early in her career, she apparently made a significant error on her very first major project, leading to its failure. She had to report this failure to her boss, dreading the confrontation.
What happened? Did he blow up?
No. According to the story, her boss listened calmly. He then thanked her for her honesty and hard work on the project. He explicitly said he still had confidence in her abilities and attributed the failure not to her incompetence, but simply to a lack of experience in that specific area, assuring her she would learn from it.
Wow, so he took the blame off her personally.
He did. He allowed her to save face completely in front of her colleagues and herself. He preserved her dignity while still acknowledging the project failed. And the result? She left his office feeling not crushed, but incredibly loyal and determined to prove his faith in her was justified. She committed herself to learning and succeeding next time. That's the power of letting someone save face.
That's huge. Protecting dignity builds loyalty. Okay, what's next for effective leadership?
Reinforcement. Principle 6, praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement.
Praise improvement, even slight improvement. Why focus on the small steps?
Because behavior change is often gradual. If you wait for perfection before giving praise, people can get discouraged and give up. Praising small steps, genuine progress, reinforces the positive behavior and motivates the person to keep going.
It's like rewarding effort and direction, not just the final result.
Exactly. Think about teaching a child a new skill or training an employee on a complex task. You wouldn't wait until they've mastered it perfectly to offer encouragement. You praise the effort, the small successes along the way. That's great. You've really got the hang of that first step. Or, I noticed you handled that customer inquiry much more confidently today. Well done.
And the praise should be specific.
Specificity makes it meaningful. Not just good job, but I was really impressed with how you clearly articulated the solution in that meeting. Specific, sincere praise for improvement acts like fuel, encouraging more of the desired behavior. It highlights what they're doing right and makes them want to do more of it. This ties into the idea of positive reinforcement, emphasizing the good, causes the poor behaviors to diminish due to lack of attention.
Okay, praise improvement. What about setting expectations?
This leads to a very interesting psychological principle. Principle 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
Give them a reputation. How does that work? You mean like tell them they're already good at something?
Essentially, yes. If you want someone to develop a certain positive trait, say, responsibility, diligence, leadership, meticulousness, act as though that trait is already one of their outstanding characteristics.
You treat them as if they already possess the quality you want them to exhibit.
Exactly. For instance, you might say to an employee you want to be more responsible, Sarah, I need someone I can really count on for this critical task, and I know you have a strong sense of responsibility, so I'm entrusting it to you.
And the idea is they'll try to live up to that expectation?
People will often make extraordinary efforts to live up to a positive reputation that has been bestowed upon them. It appeals to their pride and their desire to be seen in that positive light. They don't want to disappoint that expectation or tarnish that fine reputation.
There was an example about a mechanic named Bill.
Yes, the story of a manager whose competent mechanic, Bill, had started getting sloppy. Instead of directly criticizing Bill's recent poor work, the manager took him aside and said something like, Bill, you're such a fine mechanic. You've been doing excellent work for us for years, and your attention to detail is usually top-notch. That's why I know you'll be able to figure out what's going on with this recent issue.
So he reminded Bill of his past reputation for excellence.
Exactly. He gave Bill that fine reputation to live up to again. And Bill, reminded of his own high standards and wanting to maintain that image, reportedly snapped back into his previous meticulous ways almost immediately.
That's fascinating. Using their own pride and past performance as leverage. Okay, what's principle 8?
Principle 8. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct.
Encourage and make it seem easy. Doesn't that downplay the problem?
Not necessarily downplay the need for correction, but it downplays the difficulty of making the correction. When someone is struggling or has made a mistake, telling them how hard it will be to fix it can be incredibly discouraging. They might just give up.
So encouragement is about building their confidence that they can fix it.
Precisely. Be generous with encouragement. Express sincere faith in their underlying ability. Minimize the perceived difficulty of the task or the change needed. Tell them they have the talent, that it's just a matter of practice or focus, that you know they can master it.
So instead of, this is a huge mess, it'll take ages to fix, you'd say.
You might say, okay, there are a few things here we need to adjust, but I know you have the skills to handle this. It's really just a matter of tweaking your approach on steps X and Y. I'm confident you'll get it quickly.
It lowers the emotional barrier to trying again, makes the task seem less daunting.
Exactly. It inspires them to put in the effort, to practice, to improve, rather than feeling overwhelmed and defeated before they even start.
Okay, encourage and make the fault seem fixable. What's the final principle for leaders?
The 9th principle wraps everything up beautifully, bringing us back to the core idea of motivation. Principle 9. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest.
Make them happy about doing it. How?
This is the ultimate goal of effective leadership influence. When you need someone to do something, take on a task, change a behavior, adopt a new process, you need to frame it in a way that aligns with their interests and makes them feel good about doing it.
So it connects back to principle 3 from part 1, arouse an eager want.
Absolutely. You need to show them the personal benefit. How will doing this thing make them feel more important, recognized, skilled, or satisfied? Will it give them an opportunity they desire? Will it solve a problem they care about? Will it bring them praise or advancement?
You have to structure the request so they see the what's in it for me.
Yes, but subtly and sincerely. It might be giving someone an opportunity that plays to their strengths, or delegating a task in a way that confers status or trust, or highlighting how their contribution is critical to a larger goal they believe in. You need to ensure that saying yes feels like a positive, beneficial choice for them.
So effective leadership isn't just about giving orders, it's about motivating people by appealing to their own desires and making them feel good about contributing.
That's the essence of it. These 9 principles provide a powerful framework for changing behavior and inspiring action while building trust, loyalty, and maintaining dignity. Hashtag final thoughts in contemporary relevance.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground there. 30 distinct principles across 4 key areas: fundamentals, connection, persuasion, and leadership. When you lay them all out like that, what's the big picture takeaway? What's the common thread?
The common thread really is a fundamental shift in focus. Every single one of these principles, in one way or another, pivots on moving your attention away from your own ego, your own wants, your own perspective, and focusing instead on the ego, the wants, the perspective, the feelings of the other person.
It's about developing profound emotional intelligence and empathy.
Exactly. When you master that shift, you dramatically reduce friction in your interactions. You avoid triggering defensiveness, you build rapport naturally, and you become far more effective at communicating and influencing. You become, in a sense, a more magnetic and positive force in your interactions.
And it's amazing how relevant these ideas still feel today, isn't it? Despite all the changes in technology and how we communicate.
It's incredibly relevant. The enduring power of these principles just proves that, technologically advanced as we may be, at our core, we humans are still driven by the same fundamental emotional engines. Pride, the desire for importance, the need for connection, the aversion to criticism.
Social media seems like a giant real-time laboratory for these principles, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Look at who succeeds in building genuine communities and influence online. It's rarely the people who just shout about themselves. It's the ones who apply these rules, maybe intuitively. They show genuine interest in their audience, they validate their audience's feelings and experiences, they make their followers feel important and part of something, they avoid public arguments, they handle criticism gracefully. The medium changes, but the core psychology remains the same.
There's a crucial point about sincerity, though, right? These aren't just tricks to manipulate people.
That is the critical caveat. These principles are incredibly powerful tools, but like any tool, they can be misused. If you try to apply these techniques mechanically, Without genuine underlying respect and sincerity, if you're just trying to fake interest or give hollow praise to manipulate someone, it will almost certainly backfire.
People can sense insincerity.
Usually, yes. It comes across as awkward, calculating, or just plain creepy. The goal here isn't to become a master manipulator or just control others. It's about fundamentally changing your mindset towards interaction, cultivating genuine empathy, respect, and a desire for positive, frictionless connection. The techniques work best when they flow naturally from that sincere foundation.
So the real work is internal, first changing how you view and approach others.
That's where the most profound change happens. And think about the potential impact. If mastering these ideas makes you even just, say, 10% more effective in your dealings with people.
10% better at avoiding arguments, 10% better at motivating your team, 10% better at building rapport.
Imagine the cumulative effect of that over time. How much frustration, wasted energy, and damaged relationships could you avoid? How much more could you achieve in your career, your family life, your community? The impact is potentially incalculable. It's like compound interest on your social and emotional capital.
That's a powerful thought. It really highlights the value of investing in these skills. So maybe a final thought for our listeners to take away.
Yeah, here's something to consider. We've just discussed 30 distinct principles. That might feel overwhelming. So don't try to implement all of them overnight. Instead, think about this. Which one of these principles seems like the easiest one for you to start practicing right now, today?
Maybe just focusing on using people's names more often, or making a point to find one sincere thing to appreciate about a colleague today.
Exactly. Pick one simple thing. Maybe it's consciously avoiding criticism for the next 24 hours. Maybe it's making an effort to really listen without interrupting in your next conversation. Or maybe it's trying to see a disagreement from the other person's perspective before you respond.
Just choose one and focus on it.
Choose one. Commit to consciously practicing just that one principle this week. See what happens. Notice the reactions you get. Notice how you feel. Mastering even one of these can start a positive ripple effect in all your interactions. Which one will you start with?
This was it on today's Book Guys. And guys, kindly subscribe and follow us for more such insights on various books. And also, do not forget to join our social media community to stay in touch and get updated.